Hello, I'm Joseph. I want to use Zig on my ESP32-C6. That's a RISC-V architect. I do have a couple of S3s. I didn't want to try them for this project because I've done a lot already in Rust with the Pico, the Pico W. I haven't tried the Pico 2W yet, but I generally do like the ESP32 stuff, and the reason why is there is a big swath of libraries. You have the real-time operating systems. You have HTTP server kind of at your fingertips. These aren't great by any measure, but they're at least starting points for you. And the big thing is, every time I've jumped into another language, whether like NIM is an example, I try to look for this. You can connect to these devices, but as soon as you want to access that wireless, which is in this little, by the way, this is like the size of your fingertip. This is crazy how small this is. But the wireless is built into the chip itself, both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. It's just not a possibility. You can't get access to it. And so I wanted to see if there was anyone who did this. And so this person here stated that Wi-Fi is in there. It was like in the checkbox here is a big thing for me. I tried it, it didn't work, but it does work with the C6. You can get this to run with the C6 with the real-time operating system. You have to do some work yourself for the things that are not all fleshed out yet. And Wi-Fi was one of those. And I tried to do some of the work, but I think this is coming down to a dependency order more than anything else. And so I just want to jump into some of the code here real quick and present some of the issues I have. So first off, um, the IDF requires you to set up environmentals. So like if I'm over here, I can source it. Let's type in source so it's more visual here. Actually, let me clear all this because it's a lot of crap. But we can do source of my downloads. Come on, downloads, and then ESP. Oops, and then it'll be export.sh. So we've sourced it. IDF kind of puts everything into here. This messes up everything I'm going to do in my terminal in relation to Zig. So I can't even compile with Zig on here, although you don't necessarily need to. Instead, what you do is you do idf.py build, which will build it. The catch here is you also need to set your target. So before you even do that, you do something like set dash target ESP32-C6. That will set the target. You would do a reconfigure as well, and then a build. And when I say reconfigure, it's IDF py reconfigure, IDF py build, uh, and then you can do a subsequent flash here. Now I can't do the flash right now because I believe it's going to fail at the very last step. At least it always fails at the very last step. And that's because I've been trying to do some stuff with the Wi-Fi that's not in the sample project to start with. And so I'm going to go ahead and let that continue on. But let's go ahead and jump into some of the source code. So the first thing is I'll jump into where I was starting with Wi-Fi. This was some of the Wi-Fi code. It is not correct, by the way. When you're working with Wi-Fi on the ESP, you kind of they introduce events now. Previously, you had like a while loop to wait for this thing to be finished, to be ready for me to initialize Wi-Fi. But now they have event callbacks you can set up and stuff like that, which I want to do. But first, I need this thing to actually compile something before I can even try to run it. And that's where I was running the issues. First off, the init here, this was like was trying if it's null or nullable value. Actually, this shouldn't even be a nullable value here, so that's wrong. But I had to change this. It's because it was also trying to initialize this struct, which is extern, and the way it was initializing it, you just can't initialize it that way, and it didn't really matter anyways because you kind of need to set up functions like this. This actually needs to be set up properly. Like what I am doing here is incorrect. This is not how you set up the initialized configuration. There's a macro in the C library to do this. I need to transport that macro over. And basically what has happened is this person's ran into some of the issues I've run into with the C translate, and they ran it through C translate and then grabbed it and started to modify it to better fit. And this is not the only person that's done this. Another project off of GitHub is on another Git system, is doing the same exact thing, oddly enough, but it's a little bit different. I think this one's nicer because it hooks directly into IDF or expressive toolkit or framework. But yeah, it's all hand rolled, and you'll notice I have a sys here as well versus Wi-Fi. Um, this was another issue I have. So in the Wi-Fi here, there is a sys module being reported. It's not a .zig file. So where is this coming from? Well, it's coming from a build file here. So if I look up Wi-Fi, we have the Wi-Fi.zig, but it's including the module of sys. If we go to that, that's just IDF sys.zig, which is fine. But I needed to be able to pull this struct into my code so that I can actually initialize it, which I can't do. And it turns out I needed to add this in. There's just two ways I need to do this. One is I needed to make the build here for that as well. So if I go into sys, I had to add in sys as a module inside of the IDF stuff here. So idf.zig, and if I go to idf.zig, I need to add it down here as well to be available as a public name to jump into a public import. I don't even think using namespace works anymore. I could be wrong. Um, so maybe that was for an older version of Zig. And so yeah, that got me there. But as I started to work through this, the big kick in the mouth here was this config. This config here, um, specifically the STA config was an opaque structure. So while Wi-Fi was said to be, checkmarked, I think it was like an access point that they were testing as, um, which is what this is up here. So they were testing this as an access point to be wireless that you can connect to. Um, whereas if you wanted this to connect to another wireless thing, it wasn't defined at all. It was just opaque. And the reason why it wasn't opaque is that in C, they were doing one bit operator flags in combination for a 32-bit a U32 effectively. And if I go open, um, this doesn't have the history, so let me go ahead and let's do this. Let's do find. Oh no, it was a grep. Grep and to do. So no, it wasn't a. Do grep and it was this. So I had to look into the IDF stuff to find out where it's at. So it was in this file here and Wi-Fi, blah blah blah. So we're gonna go ahead and open this, and then we're gonna go ahead and look for this. So uh, config underscore t, and then it was the STA as well. So this bit here, the way that they did this in C was they took one 32-bit structure and broke it up into flags that you can call individually. And the way that C works with this is that it sees all this in sequence with the reserve at the very end. It's one single U32-bit field with the flags all separated out nicely, except in Zig, you can't have anything that is one bit. So I had to do a single field. And then subsequently, if in the future I do want to actually set the flags, I need to come here and read this or make helper functions around this to be able to do bitwise operations on this here to match the capabilities of what the C code did, but in Zig. I don't know of any way offhand to do this in Zig right now, so it would just be bitwise operators with the specific position of each one, and you can see these here are like 2 bits versus 1 bit for the HE capabilities versus connection features and stuff like that. Anyways, that's what I did there, and then the last bit that threw me for the loop is currently I'll get a compiler error if I try to build this out right now. So if I do build, the compiler error is of Wi-Fi stuff, which is weird because I actually made a separate C version of this, and they had all the exact same components of IDF. So you can see like the components listed here. But if I go to the very end here and I go to, let's do this. Let's do a soft wrap. So set wrap soft true. We get all these like things here. and I had to do some hunting as to where these functions existed. So I think the very bottom one was an easy one. It was like a config or something like that. Yeah, ESP config. So what I did was I went ahead and grepped the symbol in here in the Expressives SDK for it, and then brought this into Helix to go ahead and see which library it was. Um, and, oh, actually, this is the wrong one. Quit here. So I need to do clear grep. It was this here. Okay, so it was this command, and I took the library it was needed for that specific thing. And the thing is, like, we see T here. T means it's defined at least. In the other libraries that were included, they were all U, undefined. And so I looked at the ESP thing, C6, so I saw this here. I grabbed this little tidbit just to see if it was actually being included. And then I went into actually the build output here. So come on, quit all. And we're going to do another build here. Um, and go to the very last line and look this up. So we're going to look up this, and it matches. And it's on line 12. If I do I got to soft wrap again. If I look at this here, this is the linking command to finally build out the final elf bit, the executable or whatever, the binary for the program, and it fails out. Now, interestingly, the position of this matters. Um, and so this is at 7942. And the reason why this matters is that this needs to be before the other libs um, that are also being defined, at least from what I've understood so far. And so 7942, but then the other issue is it needs to be before ESP Wi-Fi. So if I look up ESP Wi-Fi dash A, the first instance of this, if I go back to the beginning and I press N, is at 3519 versus the other one is at 7942. So this is being included after lib Wi-Fi and probably after um, everything else that's needed for it as well. This needs to be moved forward. This is where I just don't know where to go next. The only thing I can think about is there is a Zig build CMake thing here, and when I try to track down, okay, where's this component thing coming from? I try to look it up here. Actually, look up this bit. It's here, which says include DIRs, target property, include directories, implicit C. Uh, I don't know. Maybe I do some printing here, but I'm thinking all this is doing is taking like literally every single lib and just including it without having a proper way to define it. Um, because I don't see anywhere where it's being selected. I know that there is what's it called? Um, idf.py and then menu config. And in menu config, you can set all the properties of this. So if I go to the component here and then go all the way down to Wi-Fi here, you can checkbox all this stuff. And all this does is generate, if I go back to Helix here, an SDK config file. Why is it not even showing it? That's weird. hx SDK config. So it does this. And I've compared this to my C version that does work and is exactly the same. Every single little flag is set to exact same thing and it does not matter. It still has that compiling issue. So I'm assuming it's just an order of libraries that are being included. And how do I fix this? A little bit more deep diving on that part. It could literally be a problem with this that Zig CMake file that I was going through. I just kind of ran out of steam for this video and trying to get the Wi-Fi to work. So that's it. Anyways, if you guys want to try some embedded programming on a really, really dirt cheap AliExpress C6 thing, you can do that. If you want to support Expressive, buy their official versions. They are more expensive. But if not, you can also try the Pico. I think that's further along than the ESP line, if I'm not mistaken, when I last looked at as well, because there's the Zig Micro, a Micro Zig project. If I look for it here, let's see, micro zig, which has a much more encompassing bit of stuff here. I think they try to get away from what's it called, the Raspberry Pi Pico SDK, so you don't have to download it. But yeah, this is another one you can try for the Pico line. I don't think the ESP was on here, if I'm not mistaken. So we have uh, and many others. Does it show the actual list here? Nope. That's just that. But yeah. Anyways, take care, and let me know if you guys have any success in this stuff.